Hello, beautiful and wonderful people. Welcome back to As Far As We Know with Sarah Burton and Toulouse Beckier. You probably can see her. Or if you're not watching, you can't see her. Anyway, this episode, we are talking about a life outside the 9 to 5, which the 9 to 5 might look different for all of you. But for me, it's just 8 hours. 8 hours. Actually, sometimes it's 9. Depends. Anyway, I think if being a hobbyist was a career, I would be rich because the amount of hobbies that I have is crazy. And it's not like, oh, I do these hobbies all the time. It's like, I know how to do so many crafts and things, and that's just how it works. And it's not that I don't want to master these things. It's just that I get bored easily or get burnt out on some of them. So I'm like, I'm going to try this new one and see where it goes. Or I think of a craft or an idea and I'm like, I want to figure out how to do this. My motto is if I see it, I probably can do it, especially if it's something on Pinterest. I just like making things and making things for people. Anyway, one of my friends brought this up to me and was like, you should talk about this. And I said, what more do I know than anyone else, honestly, because we're all trying to figure it out. But I will tell you some things that I do know, because outside of work, I do like to do a lot. And that includes just all of the hobbies or just hanging out with my friends, being with people. So instead of lying around, this is what I do. But I do lie around a lot. So as of right now, my day looks like when I get home, I either come home, change, go out and go to the rock climbing gym, or I'll go out and go to a church event or just hang out with my friends, or I'll change, sit here and do something. A lot of times these days, it looks like making a podcast or working on that, working on some gifts for people or different notes and things. And it depends. It depends on the season that I'm in. One thing that I do want to touch on is I feel like there's a lot of misconception about hobbies. And a few of them are, I feel like for some people, hobbies come easy. A lot of them come easy to me. But there's a lot of them that I have learned and worked at that are really hard and don't come easy. And if it comes easy at first, it usually gets harder down the road when you try to master it or get better at it. And some of those are like running. Literally, why is that a thing? Because my gosh, it is so hard. To run is so hard. I can do strong girl things all day long. But as soon as it comes to running, I feel like I'm going to die. Like if a bear was chasing me, there's no way. But if someone puts on a good tune, or it's me. If I put on a good tune, I could run all day. So it just depends. Sewing, my gosh, still learning that one, but it is so hard to sew because if you have a sewing machine and let's say you go and you go and then you're like, frick, I got to back up and fix this. Sometimes you back up, thread goes everywhere. How do you fix that? I still don't know. So stuff like that is like, I'm just kind of going as I'm going. And I'm still learning these hobbies. There's a lot that I'm still learning, especially when it comes to Adobe Creative Cloud, for those of you that use that. I'm still learning so many software things, and it's not like, I don't think you can truly master a hobby. I think you can get really good at it, but there's always more you can learn, and there's always usually someone that's better than you. Unless you're like a world champion or something, there probably is still someone better than you. They just aren't, you don't know them yet. Anyway. And I think a lot of times people expect to be great at something right away, or they're like, oh no, they're just really gifted at that. But that's not how it works. It takes practice, and practice doesn't even make perfect. You have to fail so many times to even be good at something. I think a lot of times we expect that we are going to be perfect at something right away, and that's just not the reality. We have to fail to succeed. And that happens in almost every facet of life. We're not built to be perfect, as far as I think. This one makes me the most frustrated, especially with media these days. And it's that the idea that hobbies have to be your career, or they should be. And they can't be just for your health, just for fun. Because the amount of things that I see, and I find myself falling into this where it's, oh no, I have to do this and be the best at this so I can make money from it. Why can't we just have a good time? I had this revelation, not even I had it, but I started thinking about it a few years ago where everything I was making was for people. And I was like, this is great, but like, what's for me? And so then I started making stuff just for myself and creating for myself. And then I was like, actually, this is fun, but I do like making stuff for people. So having a balance of that, not just everything that you make or do is for people, having time and doing stuff by yourself. But I think hobbies, which at least I think this, or I thought this, where hobbies are like, oh, you have to be creating something. You have to be like really doing something, or it's like, I don't even know. Like, I'm like, oh, running is a hobby. Oh, drawing is a hobby, this and that. But then I'm like, oh, reading's just reading. Sleeping is sleeping. For me, sleeping's a hobby, okay? It's not just I sleep and that's it. But like, no, napping, love it. That's a hobby for me, something I enjoy. If you look up the definition of hobby, I don't have it written down, but I remember looking it up and I thought, this sleeping could count as a hobby. So it's just whatever you do to enjoy your time. But I think there are 3 main categories. And the first one is activity. And that could look like walking, going to the gym, yoga, longboarding. And the big thing, which I'll talk about this next week, a little sneak peek for you, is I think a lot of times when we think activity, especially with social media, we see, oh, you have to go to the gym every single day. You have to do this and this and this and this, which activity doesn't have to look like that. Go on a walk. Literally, just go on a walk. Walking is so good for you. And I think we forget that a lot of the time. Like, walking is so good for you. It's not even about how much, because walking burns so much more fat from what I've experienced than running. And it's just so much better for you. And it's just like getting everything flowing. And it's good for your brain, just everything. Anxiety, I love walking because it gets rid of things like that. And things like longboarding, that's fun. And if you're like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know what activity I can do, that's fun. I literally picked up rock climbing because I was like, I want to climb some rocks. Here I am. I do it like 3 days a week because it's so fun and it's an activity I like. I don't want to go lift weights all the time. And hey, if that's your thing, you do that. But for me, that's not my thing. I like it sometimes. And again, I'm not going to go for a run unless I really feel like I need to. The second category I would say is creating. And that could look like sewing, doodling, drawing, painting, embroidery, photography, baking. Baking is making things. It's creating. And so I feel, again, with this one, all these categories, I feel like this is this is more misconceptions or what is more popular other than what is popular. I think, I don't know if any of what I just said there made sense, but in my head it did. So you just got to stick with me. Creating. A lot of times I think we're like, oh, again, I have to take photos. They have to be really good. Bro, you don't have to have a camera to take photos. Because I do a lot of photography and I do have a camera. But in high school, sometimes we'd go out in photography class and some people would have cameras and some people wouldn't. We'd just take our phones and then we'd edit it after or work with it. You don't have to have a camera to start photography or have that as a hobby. You can just walk around with your phone. And phones these days are really good at taking photos. Like, they're really high quality. For baking, you don't have to be that good. You don't have to be like sourdough queen. I make all these fancy foods. Get some cookies from the store, you know. You're baking, you're making something. And it might not be like sourdough, but you're making something. And doodling, you don't have to be good at drawing. I just doodle. I don't even draw. I do little lines. Look up some videos. It's so fun when you start doing little doodles. I draw these cats. And this is inspired from my friend because she started drawing them when I was like, oh, this is funny. We just draw a big shape and then you put a cat face on it. It's so fun. Anyway, creating. I feel like a lot of the things that I make, I try to compare, especially when it comes to the things where I'm like, oh, this could be better. Especially when I started this podcast, even now, I don't know, me acting like it's been so long. I've only put out 2 episodes. But when I first started this podcast, I listened through the episode when I was editing it, and I thought, wow, this is trash. And because I was learning as I was going and learning new things of what to do next time. And I think a lot of time we can discredit what we create because it's not as good as where we want to be, or where we should be. And it's not about being the best. It's just we want to be better. And that's good. But I think what we make or made shouldn't be just thrown out completely. I think it's good to see the progress of where you've come from. And a lot of times when I see stuff that I've made in the past, I like looking back at it because I'm like, wow, that wasn't that bad, but like, look where I came. So in the moment, not thinking, oh, this is the worst thing ever, but being like, you know what, I'm gonna keep this for the future. Anyway, 3rd category. This one is my favorite. I love to rest, and rest, I think, is its own category in itself. And that could be a combo of the other 2, but activity, I don't think you can rest that much when you're doing that. Creating, you can, but it takes a lot of the brain. Rest, I'm talking like stare off into space. Literally have some floor time. Lay on the floor. It's so good for you. The amount of problems I have solved by laying on the floor is obscene. You just need to lay on the floor if you're having problems. And a lot of the times they'll get solved. Turn on some music. Just chill there. I lay on the floor. My cat comes, lays on my chest. It's like a weighted blanket. It's so nice. Read. Some of you might not think this is resting, but I think that there's a book for everyone. You know, I don't know what that looks like. I like nonfiction, but then my friend's like, sorry, you need to try fiction. So I tried it and I'm like, this ain't that bad. I can just forget about the world. Another one, watching a movie. Who says that can't be a hobby? Who says watching movies can't be a hobby? I'm saying it is because I love movies. I go on Letterboxd after. I'm like, this was the worst film ever, or this was the best film ever. Haha, this is so funny. Okay, also side note, some of y'all on Letterboxd, you are some of the funniest people I know. Seriously. Because these comments, I be giggling over here on my couch reading these comments. Anyway, and last one, I think sleep needs to be its own hobby because some of y'all are masters at it. And this is another little tangent I'm talking about next week. Sleep is so important for your health. And some of y'all are getting a lot of it, and that's good. And you might be getting too much. But there's a good balance of like, hey, you probably should be getting more, or like, hey, you should not be sleeping this much. But it's so good for you to like, so many things get healed in your sleep. Like when you get sick, stomach sick, and you're like, hey, I probably should, or your mom's like, or your dad or someone that I've always been told this is like, hey, you should probably go sleep, rest. It heals so many things. And I think it is one of the most underrated hobbies. After that, this is my last biggest point. When you're after work, you're sitting there, you're like, this is so much to do. Why is there always so much to do? I don't have time. I want to do this. It's not what you want to do, is what you can do. Because the amount of hobbies that I have that I want to do is great, but I cannot do them all. So sometimes I just create a list and then see what I can do. But most of the time I come home, I just read because I'm like, it's too much today. And that's okay. There's only so much time that you do have, and there's only so much that you can do. So we can't forget that it's important not to overcommit to yourself what you can do versus what you want to do. I think a lot of times we think that we have to be doing something or we have to have hobbies or like, oh, we go home and, you know, I should be doing something after that, which is true. Like you should be like doing stuff, but you don't have to. Literally just let it hang out. You don't have to be doing all this, trying to be this. Do whatever you think is the best way to spend your time. because some weeks I won't go do any activity. Sometimes I'll go for a walk because I think that's good. But hobbies aren't life or death. They're just nice, and they help you stay out of they help me stay out of the big old brain here getting in my head, especially activity. That's really good. I think it's important to be content before you, not even before. I think it's important to be content, period. And where you are and like what you're doing. And that doesn't mean you have to be completely like, oh no, I love where I am. You can think about the future and be like, no, I want to be here. But it's important to appreciate where you are. Otherwise, I think it can make you spiral and you forget the reason why you're doing what you're doing, or it can just make you not want to do anything. So at the base of it, I think it's important to be content. For me, what keeps me content is knowing like what I'm looking forward to in the future. That honestly, which is weird, it keeps me grounded it keeps me grounded where I am now. A lot of the times I put dates for like future trips, where I'm going, when I'm going to see this person next on my calendar. A lot of times I'll put activities I'm going to be doing when it comes to concerts. And I guess that goes along with trips, but I put rock climbing on my calendar and stuff that I know I'm going to do. And that might look different for you. You might not like calendars at all, and that's okay. But just having an idea in your head. Another thing is I try to set goals for myself, like creative goals. And this one, goals don't have to be like, I'm going to run a marathon, which good for you if you are, because my gosh. But it could be like, I just want to read today. I don't know how much. It could be 1 page, but like stuff like that. I think I thought Toulouse, you're going to accidentally turn off this podcast and I can't have you doing that. Oh my gosh, you're so close. Anyway, where was I? Setting goals. I think it's important to have just realistic goals. Things that I love checking off lists. So stuff like that, having like, I'm going to read 1 page today, or I'm just going to read today, or I'm going to just rest. Resting can be a goal. It doesn't have to be something crazy you have to do. I think also I like to go on Pinterest a lot, and I found myself doing this a lot where I compare, but on Pinterest, I feel like I set more inspiration and goals for myself of like, I want to do this at some point, or it's just a way to kind of get out of my head and see like what I do like and things that just make me happy. So that's a lot of times how I stay content, because it reminds me of like my creative drive. Another thing is knowing that I am where I am for a reason, and that God has placed me where I am for a reason. And a lot of times I don't know what that is, but I do know when I look back where I was at that time, I was there for a reason. Like I can look back at almost any season I'm in or where I'm at, and I know I was there for a reason, and I can pinpoint that. I think my last piece to you is that not every moment has to be filled, and that's okay. You don't have to be doing 24/7 activity. It's good to rest and it's good to have time, but it's also good to do stuff. Do stuff with people, have community, make goals that are make you want to be creative, make you want to learn some stuff. And motivation is the hardest part. And I think I'm going to talk about that in another episode as motivation, but just getting there is the hardest part. And you might be like, that's so much work, I don't know if I'll like it. You have to try. The amount of times that I haven't taken photos in a while, and I have a photo shoot and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go. I don't really enjoy it. And then I go and I'm like, that was the best decision ever. And I just love photography, and I forget, because after you don't do it for a while, or if you haven't tried it, you don't know. And you can forget how happy it makes you. So I think it's important to just try and put yourself out there. And people are so nice. They help so much. YouTube, best friend. The amount of hobbies you can learn from there is insane. I learned almost everything from YouTube. All of my crafts, seriously. Or just Google. Fantastic. That's all I really have. But I will leave you with these 3 questions from Toulouse. All your hair is getting in my mouth, Toulouse. Anyway, first one is, what keeps you content? And again, that goes back to, it doesn't have to be crazy, like goals. It can be very simple. Don't think too hard about this. what is a hobby you have been putting off that you actually have the ability to start now? This goes back to the what can you do versus what you want to do. Third one is, if you had to take a guess, what do you think is the purpose of where you are right now? And it doesn't have to be crazy. And again, these might seem like deep questions, but just don't think too hard. Or if you want to, go for it. I like thinking hard. But these ones specifically, I don't want you to have a crisis over. But yeah, thank you for joining me. I think this is probably going to be the longest one I've had so far. Hoping that they don't get too long, because I know I get bored when it hits like 20-minute mark. Anyway, me and Toulouse, we'll see you next week. Bye!